Howdy, howdy, howdy. Here we go. Got a few people coming in. Uh, Andy, Robert, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year,
Happy New
Johnny. How
Year.
you doing?
Yeah, not bad. We got some popping in the chat over here. Let's see. We got Dwight. He said he's a little froze up at minus 18 degrees.
That's a little froze up, all right. Yeah, I had to comment to that one too. That's a lot. Like we're single digits and like 7 or 8 inches of snow on the ground, and I'm seriously complaining about it. But when Dwight says it's negative 18, or Robert up by Seattle, or I talk to our Canadian buddies, to route for something, I feel a little guilty about complaining about it, but not right this second. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Oh, we
at a
got-
nice 50 degrees right now in Washington State. Thank God.
50
But we're
degrees.
getting a ton of rain.
Yeah, I don't like you because we're 36 right now, and the rain's going to end in a few hours. We've been getting a lot of rain lately. Of course, with a change in the weather, we got a La Nina, as they say, so we're going to be a lot more wetter this winter.
we had a La Nina summer, didn't we?
Yeah. Yep. Well, let's see. We got a new fella here, Ethan. How you doing? Welcome to the group. How are you? Happy New Year to all y'all. Jason, Mark. Happy Valley Happy Valley Hobbies.
Say that 10 times fast.
Yeah, really.
Easy for you to say.
Right.
-2.
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all can have this negative business. I ain't even happy. There needs to be at least 2 numbers there. That really ain't even enough.
Yeah, we got Chris is here, Dave, Randall.
You still trying to figure that out?
I mean, I've spent months thinking about this thing.
Man,
so
we've round tabled that thing to death and you're still figuring it out.
I know we're there.
Johnny, I'm telling you, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Let me tell you.
No.
Jeez Louise. The nerve of some people's kids.
Mm-hmm.
We figured this thing out. You've done all kinds of due diligence with me and drew the thing out, SketchUp. It's beautiful. It's there. I'm just like filling in the last little gap details and stuff, making sure no, it's complicated. So making sure I'm not missing something.
Do I need to call Angie and have her just come in and give you a Denozo to get you jump started or what?
No, have her just put him in the box and close it up so he can't get outside the box anymore.
Seems like you're not going to work too hard at looking for an excuse to not call her for such things. So I mean, that seems like.
But at least that's a legitimate reason.
Listen, like I said, we're there. I know we're there. Months of talking about this thing and figured it out, and it is complicated. And we're talking about this my bridge, my like 6-something foot bridge. It goes over the aisle and stuff. That's complicated, but I feel very good about it right now. I'm just trying to make sure we're not missing details.
I see Andy's come up with a new phrase, just filling in the little gaps, which means he's still looking for the unusual way of doing something.
Things
Or
don't
what
really
I'm
change.
missing and make it just go work.
Okay, what are you
This
missing?
is an unusual process.
No, it's not. No, it's really not. People have done it several times. What are you really missing right now?
I'm not sure I'm missing anything. I feel pretty good about it. I'm thinking through each step of the process, like how it ends up looking. What is all the details? How does it go together? That's one part. We've done most of that. Now I'm thinking the process of assembly and the steps to make sure that, the order of operations is my consideration now. I'm just trying to figure out the order of operations.
Wake me up when he's done, Robert.
Yeah.
So I met a buddy of his, and now I'm such an asshole. I can't, excuse my French. I can't remember what the guy's name was, unfortunately. Who are we hanging out with today?
That's all right. Corey works for me.
Corey, that's right. Hanging out with Corey.
Corey.
So Andy starts. He works for him, right? So
he's a good one.
Andy starts going down this whole, Andy style diatribe And Corey just jumps in. He goes, hold on. It gives me exactly what Andy was going to say in about 7 words or less.
I've known him for 10 or 11 years or something. So, yeah.
Oh, that was gold. And he's over here going, oh, man.
I'm consistent, okay?
We'll give you that. You're definitely consistent, buddy.
I have a tendency to see things as complicated. That is my personality. I'm an engineer. That's the way things are.
Yeah, hand Andy a book of matches and ask him how many different ways to light them.
Oh gosh, don't give me open-ended things.
Happy Valley Hobbies says make a working mock-up at Andy Crawford.
Yeah.
Listen,
so
I love that idea in theory, but when we're talking about Andy, you're going to spend at least 6 hours just waiting for him to figure out how to build the mock-up first.
No, I've got it. I've got a piece of foam core here ready to chop up. I've already done this once. I've already built one out of foam core once. But like most things on my layout, the things that I really like are the things that I'm on my 3rd or 4th
iteration
process.
Yeah.
They get better. I mean, they just get better. I definitely believe in not being afraid. Nothing is precious to me that I built. It's all destroyable the moment I can figure out a better way to do something, because that's when things really get better. So I built one mock-up. I built it straight, but I decided I wanted to do it curved. Now we've got all that figured out. And like I said, me and Robert figured the craziness of this curve out. And I mean, yes, there's some little subtleties like these pieces have to be a 64th, literally a 64th longer on one side to make it all work out. That's fine. We figured that out. That's precision. We're there. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Very much appreciated that. We were late last night, just powering the last details of it. And then I cut material today and brought it home with me so I could try to build over the weekend. And
I pulled that up in SketchUp, drawn it out and everything else like that. And come to find out, the angle that the degrees he was looking at was 1/64th of an inch difference from the left side to the right side.
1.4 degree, and it's 22-foot radius curve. It's a bridge, 6.5 foot bridge, roughly 85 inches in the air on a 22 foot radius. 20 foot radius. It's a subtle curve that just over 6.5 foot. The deflection is 6 inches, but you'll see that. 6 inches of curve deflection.
Yeah, you can actually see that.
Yeah, and it matches the prototype. Robert has pulled it up as I have, and we've looked at it on maps and stuff because it's a prototype, and it will be correct. Correct number of towers, correct number of panels, correct number of panels in the girder bridges, everything.
So Happy Valley Hobby says, then build it with about 40 exclamation marks on the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I may mock it up one more time, but I'm not even sure I need to do that. I think I am going to build it, but there's a lot of parts that I don't want to waste.
At this point, if I was you, what I would do is go ahead and build it out of styrene and see what, or not styrene, foam core.
Yeah,
just so that you can make sure it's going to work the way you want before you commit to hacking up some aluminum,
Yeah,
and then having that come out wrong.
Because the aluminum part's not horribly expensive, but it's $30 or $40, $20-$30 worth of parts that get wasted in time and everything. The actual bridge girders and all that stuff, that would be more involved. But I think I've come to the conclusion after our last discussion that I'm going to build it. Heck, I'll spray it black. No problem. And put the track on it and probably even hang it and get it running before I ever make it look like a bridge. It will
airbrush it black.
Pardon me?
Airbrush it black.
Yes. All right, Dave. Do not give Andy any ideas there or any more excuses.
Count the ties yet?
I've counted it. It's counted. It's correct. I haven't.
Well, I tell you what, if you're going to paint aluminum, make sure you use a aluminum primer.
An etching, right? Is that a self-etching primer?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the interesting thing about the bridge that Andy's modeling is real world. It has each of the sections in between the towers is where the angle sits, but then the section right above the tower is dead straight. So if we figured this out, if he was going to actually model this prototypical as much as possible, he would have to put in a 0.75 or 74 degree angle on each one of those sections in between the bridge towers. And I'm like, dude, no. It's too much.
It's a lot. No question about it. It's all of this is a lot. But that's just one view. I mean, the bridge is large, but there's a couple towers of it. It's large, it's tall, large and in charge. And that's the prototype for it.
Now, the cool thing is that that bridge is just barely wide enough to fit the outside edges of a locomotive.
Well, they kind of overhang and stuff too, because there's no walkways, there's no handrails, there's no nothing. So, and it's going to go over the aisle with zero protection. So it has to be correct. You know, it can't have, you know, the track and the alignment and the level and the pitch and, you know, and I'm not trying to do anything crazy. Like, I mean, it's a very 20-foot radius curve. It's a very, you know, incredibly shallow curve. Doesn't need anything like super elevation or anything complicated. It's just, and it's a fixed curve all the way through. Whereas the other two bridges that I built previous, although one of them's like 2.5, 3 feet, and one of them's like 2 feet, they're curved. Both of them are, much like what we're talking about here on this, but they're just 3 parts for one and 5 parts for another, but they're on easements. The curve is different on one side of the bridge than it is on the other side, and they have super elevation on them, very gently super elevation. But so they were a little more complicated in some ways. But if the train derails, I mean, it's on bench work. You know, it's not 85 inches in the air. I think how did I say that earlier, Robert? It is it was like the risk of a meteor hitting Earth. It's a low risk, low probability,
high
high impact or high
impact.
Consequence. Yeah. So.
Now, I know I'm going to wish I hadn't asked this. Andy's talking about this thing being 85 feet in the air. Is that the prototypical height also, Andy?
Oh, 85 inches. It's 85 inches off the floor, but from the scenery, it will be prototypically, it will be the correct height prototypically from the scenery, except for the section in the middle of it where the aisle goes through. And granted, the aisle is deeper than
5 minutes later. Return.
Yeah. But yes.
The short answer, Johnny, is yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, here comes Mr. Bolu. I hope everything's going fine for you down there in Australia.
I haven't seen hide or hair of that guy in a while.
And he also said Andy needed to shave.
I do. I hate this stuff, honestly, but
well, I just bought a new bag of razors, so I'll email you one.
A bag of razors? You buy razors by the bag?
And he's gonna email you one.
Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, Happy Valley. Only 5 minutes later.
I was being friendly. That's
5 minutes later, because he's already spent the 3, 4, 5 hours on multiple. Now that was 3 or 4 hours last night when we hammered through this, and it's not because I'm thick-headed. Yes, but there's that too. It's not just because I'm thick-headed, because we have numerous previous conversations. And Ralph, I mean, this whole architecture stemmed from modeling it off of the bridge. Ralph built it, then we've taken it and figured out how to put it on a curve, which Ralph said not to do.
Yeah, he's not thick-headed.
A bit.
I gotta get a longer ruler.
Yeah, that's right. Listen, man, anything worth doing, you know, it's at least worth doing right, if not worth overdoing.
Well, and all joking aside, it being 85 inches up in the air and as narrow as it's going to be, you have to get that right.
Yeah.
There's no slop. for as narrow as that's going to be. There's no room for slop.
No, there's no forgiveness, or you're going to end up crying about that, or I'm going to end up crying about this thing, man. You know, you send 3 scale trains rivet counters across the top of that bridge on a grade, on a curve,
and they come down off the side of that thing, man. Yeah. If I was you, I would put wind tunnel screens on both sides of that, because if you get a stiff breeze, that sucker's coming right off of there.
Well, yeah, that's. And I think, and I will for a little bit be pretty trepidatious about running across it for a while. I'm going to be pretty gentle before I do. But it's also a pusher grade, so you're pushing trains across this thing with locomotives on the rear. But
get you some like you could probably get yourself some. Well, I'm sure Angie's got nylon stockings, right? So just cut a couple of those up, stretch them out underneath the thing. So if they do fall, it's got something to catch it.
I think me and Ralph talked about that once, about building a Foxconn or whatever, the factory China where they put the nets outside to catch people. That, you know, we were talking about building some Foxconn nets, but and I think I will when I first get the thing operating. Like, again, I'm going to be very trepidatious for the first 30 or 40 times I'm running across the bridge. I'm going to be real gentle with it.
I could see him now, Johnny. I could see him now. He's got his proto throttle in his hand. And he's sitting there and he's kicking it over into notch 1 and then kicking it out, and kicking it into notch 1 and then kicking it out. And he's standing right underneath of it, just like this, watching it go, just in case it comes over sideways.
That's
Yeah, and then the engineer flushes the toilet.
Right, and off it goes.
and that took us a while of conversation and talking about was how to build the structural modules, the TOMA or whatever terminology is appropriate for these modules, how to build the modules so that, you know, expansion and contraction wouldn't cause a situation where the bridge wanted to drop out of its abutments on either side. So, which we figured all that out. Well, you know, I'm extending the bridge right on into the road bed, but so it'll be locked in there and it's not going to go anywhere. But
well, there's that. But I mean, realistically, when you're talking about expansion and contraction, we cut about a 1/16, maybe an 1/8 of an inch gap, right, to account for that. It's not moving that much. So if you set your bridge so it kind of free floats between the two ends, it's not going to move too much. It might misalign a little bit, but it's not going to move side to side enough for the train to just kind of drop right off the face of the thing.
But Ralph done a neat thing with his, basically. So he, like, I don't have the stuff to actually show this right, but he basically had a block hidden on top of the abutment. Think of it the way a bearing surface would be, or a bridge shoe or whatever, to where the U-channel piece. So these U-channels go between the metal strips that go across the bridge. There's a metal strip on either side, and then there's these U-channels that get epoxied in above, you know, so it ends up like this. U-channels, and those U-channels go in where it's above the towers. But also putting a little piece of this at the end. I've got some cut in some pretty short distances. So at the end where it hits the abutment, you can have a block. You can have a block kind of setting on the abutment, and that U-channel, you know, will lock down on top of that thing. So it can move a little in and out, expand and contract, but the alignment left and right will be ensured.
Yeah.
I feel pretty good about that working too.
Why Are You Naked Force says, just put it in notch 8 and grit your teeth.
Yeah, you get there. That's not the first run across, man. Or you run it the first run across with some $70 or $80 Ather, you know, blue box or something you've had for a while, and maybe that's okay. But you're not going to see it's, you know, a cut of 3 or 4 scale trains rivet counters across that thing to begin with in notch 8, just gritting your teeth. Because, yeah.
If you're going to commit, just commit. I think that's his point. I'd throw about 3 rivet counters, maybe a museum series, you know, and just the most expensive cars you got behind it. Just wing that sucker across and see what happens.
Well, they're all tangent scale trains and exact cars, pretty much most everything, and all, you know, all the locomotives cost about the same price. They're all, you know, 250 to 270, 280 locomotive, and my trains are 3 or 4 locomotives on the head end. So every train running across there is $800 in locomotives plus $400, $500 in pushers if you have two on the rear. And, typical train is $1,500 worth of freight cars. I mean, this stuff is expensive. So that's why I'm being persnickety about this thing. Well, no, I'm persnickety anyway. The one way I could justify being persnickety about this bridge is there's a lot of cost if it's wrong.
Randall wants to know what's a decent looking Athearn blue box Alco PA1 be worth?
About $5. It really depends on who's looking to buy it. Everybody's got their price.
Yeah. Well, like everything else, something is worth what someone else is willing to pay for it. And there's a lot of Athearn blue box, a lot of variety and variants in Athearn blue box. There's SD40s or SD38s that are a dime a dozen because they made them in such quantity. And there are a few more that are a little bit more rare, but it's a lot of work to get an Athearn blue box locomotive. I had a bunch of them, many of them years ago. It's a lot of work to get them up to. And I'm not trying to compare them to scale trade rivet counter. I'm just trying to compare them to like a Kato or an Atlas that you could buy for $75 and stick a decoder in. I mean, you could buy a scale trade.
Where are you finding that?
Operators. I got two Atlas C36-7s. I paid $65 for one of them and $80 or $90 for the other because it's an odd pay scheme.
I'm gonna need the link.
So, well, and I bought one of them off Mike Rose from Facebook, off of Facebook, and then the other one was an Evil Bay purchase. But I mean, there are no decoders and stuff. But the one Mike Rose told me is already nailed for a decoder. But still, even Scale Trade's Operator Series I've said this before. Scale Trade's Operator Series locomotive, MSRP $99. Put a $20 loc pilot, $25 loc pilot decoder in the thing. You're $125 with DCC. You don't have sound, but with DCC. And that's a great locomotive. That's good stuff, man. So going to all the trouble to remote. Unbelievable, people or something. So going to the trouble of remotoring an Athearn blue box these days is just, it's a lot of work. If there's a rare locomotive you can't get somewhere else, maybe, but yeah, U36Cs, I really love those. I have a real fondness for those things, and these C30-6s, I'm real fond of these C30-6s from Atlas. They're great locomotives. Separate grabs, come in the bag. They're good looking locomotives, and they're, they require a little bit more work, but not that much. I mean, these are great looking locomotives, separate wire grabs. The handrails are okay. KVmodels.com sells some etched parts that you can pop this set of vents off and throw it at the floor, of course. Pop this set of vents, and you can buy these that are etched and see-through. I mean, you can get these locomotives up to comparable to anything else on the market, and you're maybe $120, $30 with EMU cables, hoses, and all that. You're maybe $130 plus decoder.
Or you got two other options. You could just buy the $99 locomotive and run it and be happy with it because you paid $99 for it. Or you could save your money till you can afford that Scale Trades Rivet Counter Series locomotive that you've always been wanting and be happy with it right now.
Well, that's what I might do. But nobody makes. The only two companies I know of that make this is these Atlases. And maybe Athearn Blue Box, but I mean like in a moderate quality. These Atlases, which I think are Kato drivetrains, but they run spectacular. They make them, and Broadway Limited makes it. Broadway Limited, who I love their locomotives. They're beautiful. I love them real well, really. But I despise their electronics. So you're talking $250 plus $110 or so for a decoder. You're talking about a $360+ locomotive. Whereas I can take an Atlas and do a little bit of work to the thing, And I'm going to have to paint them anyway because they don't. You know, they haven't made. I don't think Broadway had it in this maroon scheme. So, and the maroon scheme is basically right. I mean, I need to, you know, I need to take Ralph's advice to this thing and, you know, make it dirty as it should be.
Dwight says, Andy, just buy a cheap Tyco or Bachman and use that for testing the bridge.
Yeah, well, I have a Bachmann PA locomotive that was relatively inexpensive. I when I first got back into the hobby 5 or 6 years ago, I bought. I'll use it. I'll test it first. It's no DCC or anything. I'll just DC. I'll run it first, and then I have I think it's an Atlas. SW1 or T9 or something, one of those little switchers that I'm going to use on my track cleaning train that doesn't even have a shell on it. So odds are it can take the fall. So I will be testing before I send a $300 locomotive across it, for sure.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I haven't put him up.
Well, we turned this video on so we can see what's up.
We didn't really get this issue with Werby, did we?
I mean, a time or two.
It's a lot more rare.
Well, yeah. I don't, but I think it has to do with the time. Just people are just getting worse about this because the only way to get this link probably is via scraping of YouTube to have found the link to participate here. So I think that could have happened whether it was where or
Just
not.
post it on the YouTube channel. Dave said big pillows on the floor under your bridge.
Right.
Yeah. I still honestly though, you put pillows or a mattress or you know a big or an air mattress or something like that. Still 80 inches or whatever to an air mattress or anything, it's going to be rough regardless. You know, it doesn't matter what your surface is. That is one of the disadvantages to layouts being fairly high. Like my main layout my main level in the other room is 55 to 63 inches on that level. That's the lowest points on the visible layout, at least right now. One of the consequences of having layouts that are at eye level is that the risk of, you know, things is a lot worse than if you're building layouts that say 40 inches high or something. But I've just fallen in love with layouts that are like everybody says eye level when their layout's about right here, and mine's literally eye level for me, you know, which is effectively a midget by most people's standards. So,
well, Sparky got a pretty good question here. What do you think about frog juicers, and is there a right or wrong way to use them?
Okay. I think this would cut. My instinct is, okay, frog juicer is a spectacular device. Spectacular device. I mean, it's a lot. It depends on what you're using. If you're using tortoises, for example, just hook the contacts up. It's free frog power polarity setting if you're using tortoises. If you're using servos or manuals or pull, you know, cables or any other way to control that does not have an easy way to integrate frog polarity switching. If you're using like a choke cable or something, you could put just a switch in line with some ferrules on the switch. And so there's, if you can do it cheap with a switch like that, great. Frog juicers are phenomenal. Where I come to on frog juicers, and I did wire a green wire because frogs are green, but I wired a green wire on all of my frogs just in case I'm wrong about this in the future. But I think it is cheaper for me to put keep alives in my locomotives. Plus, the new scale trains locomotives I've ordered recently come with ESU V5s with keep alive in them. I think it's cheaper to put keep alives in my locomotives than it is to juice the frog. I have a lot. It's just cheaper to buy, even if you buy commercial keep alives, and I built some of them. But even if you buy $15 keep alives or $20 keep alives, how many locomotives do you have versus how many turnouts? So it's going to depend on each person's layout complexity, number of turnouts versus their inventory. The beautiful thing about doing your locomotives is you also get the side benefit of not having to clean track as much, the side benefit of more reliable running and operation, side benefit of solving other complex track work that you don't have to worry about electrifying, and you could leave gaps and stuff. And all of the money spent on that capability also travels with you if you take your locomotives to visit someone else's layout. So that's my 2 cents.
How you doing, Randall?
I don't know if you guys can hear me or not, but
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to get this thing where I can get a better signal.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, sounds pretty good right now.
Okay. No, I was going to hop on and show you guys this U36C I have right here. Let Andy
Awesome.
and Why Are You Naked for have a look at this thing. Because I know he said that he likes the Seaboard Coastline engines.
Yeah.
So.
But I'm modeling Norfolk Southern, but the secondary railroad on mine in 1986 is the Seaboard system immediately before the completion of the CSX. So there's a lot of SCL paint still on my layout.
Well, it's right here in this box. I'm going to try to unwrap it and let you guys get a look at it and see what you guys think about it here. So hopefully I can do this without damaging it.
Who's the maker of this? That would be whose locomotive is this?
It's supposed to be an Atlas Cato engine like the other U36Cs I've got, but this one's been heavily customized and weathered. So
they run as good as anything out there with a good decoder in them. They run. These locomotives I've got, C630s, they're 15, 20-year-old technology, and they run spectacular.
Yeah. These engines came out when I was a sophomore in high school, and I'm 37 years old. So you're talking, what, 20, almost 25 years ago?
Yeah, so, same thing for me too. I have an RS3, Atlas RS3, same drivetrain from Kato. I bought it when I was in high school, and I've got a couple years on you, but 3 or 4.
I'm going to try and get this guy out for my signal dies on me. So let's see. How did I unwrap this thing before? Oh, okay. There we go. Let's see. Get unwrapped. I mean, they really packed this thing well. So, all right, here it is. So there's the engine right there. Yeah. I don't know if the headlights work on this engine or not. I've never tested it yet. But when I saw this on the eBay, I was like, this is too good not to pass up. Even though I'm not a Seaboard modeler, I'm a BN and Santa Fe and BNSF modeler or collector. But
yeah,
boy, this thing was just way too nice not to pass up.
Yeah, man. Do you have like a particular year or era that you model it, or just kind of collect across the board?
No, not really. I'm not particular on one year or the other. I kind of mix and match with both the BNSF and its predecessor roads, Burlington Northern, Santa Fe, Frisco. The line I actually used to live next to was an ex-Frisco main line.
Yeah.
I never remembered it as a Frisco. I'm about 4 years too young to remember it as a Frisco main line. I
Sure.
only remember it as a BN and now BNSF, but it's
Uh-oh, like we lost the signal.
I do like that Seaboard paint, actually. Actually, I like the 86 year I'm modeling because there's really no CSX paint out there. I like the Seaboard system and Family Lines paint better than I like CSX. Probably says something about my personality that some of my favorite paint schemes are black with white logo, Norfolk Southern, and gray with a logo. That my favorite paint schemes are not the bright, flashy, beautiful paint schemes. Yeah, it's a good looking locomotive, Randall. Sure is.
Maybe that'll not kill my signal near as bad. Okay. I'm gonna try and do this without my camera turned on. It may not kill my signal near as bad if I do it this way. So, but what I was finished saying was the line I lived next to back when I was between 5 and 8 years old. It was an ex Frisco main line. I only remember it as Burlington Northern and now BNSF. So I never got to see it when it was under Frisco stewardship. Oh, that's nice.
Well,
I take it that's a new Genesis model.
That's a Genesis, and it's weathered some. I've got the trucks done some. I've got some tank work, and I've been working with the oils and Ralph stuff, trying to getting my the grease, the fuel leak stains and stuff. But I mean, these are really nice. They're Viets and louvers and stuff, but you can take the Atlas Cotto units at kvmodels.com and Details West and others, and you don't need that many parts to really make those locomotives come into their own. I mean, and honestly, you don't even have to buy
you're breaking up on my end. I think I understood what you were saying there. But yeah, that's a real nice looking engine.
And you don't even have to necessarily buy the Genesis. This is Athearn RTR stuff with etched and see-through Viets and separate grabs and stuff. I mean, and plow. I mean, it needs MU hoses and a few other things, but even the RTR, Athearn RTR stuff. I mean, you're maybe $25 in parts would really make it shine, but I mean, they're already pretty close.
It'd help if I unmuted myself, maybe. Can you throw up that screen share so that I can answer Sparky's question real quick?
Yeah.
All right, Sparky. Here's how I do mine. First of all, it's not any specific brand. It's the Fast Track stuff that I build myself. I do not power my turnouts directly ever. The reason for that is if I ever need to switch these out, which I shouldn't, but if I do, I can just unhook the rail connectors there and pop it right out. It's not glued down or anything. It's just sitting there. Where I do hook up my feeders is right at the edges on all of these. And because they're all connected via the commons and they're all wired properly, I do not have to run power throughout my ladder.
Some turnouts, you may have to do a few other things like power routing to take into consideration, but most DCC readies will follow what Robert's suggesting here, whether they're fast tracks or commercial.
I honestly don't see the reason or understand why you would need a frog juicer in a turnout situation. unless maybe you're using it, and I'm saying maybe because, like I said, I don't do this, but maybe you're using it at that turnout as a balloon track, and you're using the juicer as an auto reverser or something. But I don't understand why people
No, you could
would
use
power their
the
frogs.
reason you do. Okay, so if you have a log frog, like I've got some number 10 turnouts, that frog is quite a few inches. If you're running somewhat shorter locomotives,
Wait. Are we talking like a Shinohara turnout, or are we talking like a fast tracks turnout? Because they're different.
It's not really going to matter. Electrical scale, the frog is going to be of a certain length. If you get up into number 10 at large turnouts, that frog's going to be relatively long. And even if the frog is not relatively long on a Shinohara, on a whatever turnout you have, if you're running like in-cab switchers or even other locomotives that are much worse, that are small locomotives, and steam locomotives, especially older steam locomotives, tended to be wired in such a way through the tender pickups that they really depended on having constant power to them, and they could not deal with a dead rail for, say, 3 inches to get across the frog. But I come back to, if you need it at all, I'm just inclined that it's easier to solve the problem at the locomotive and do as you've done with your track work. And if you have a problem, solve it in the locomotive instead of the track.
Okay, I can see that in a number 10, but you're also not going to use a 10 in a yard ladder situation.
No, probably not. I don't have a big enough layout for such considerations. But even if you're running number 6s in yards, a number 6 frog, and if you have an SW, there are locomotives that will be finicky across unpowered frogs, even on number 6s. But if you put a keep alive in it that gives you 2 seconds or 3 seconds of power, and most of them give you 15 seconds, the problem's solved and it's cheaper and easier.
Okay, but unless you're running a large turnout like a number 10, I wouldn't do it for anything less than an 8 at least. But if you're running 10s, yeah, I could see the argument for a keep alive. But if you're running 5s and 6s, 5s in your yard ladders and 6s on your main, I don't see any reason for it. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so yeah.
So here's your frog. Here's your frog on a number 6. Right here. That's it. 2 axle locomotives run right through that, no problem. You don't need to go crazy. Where you wire that, Sparky, is, let's see if I can get a pen to do this. So you wire it here off of this leg, you wire it here off of this leg, and you wire it here off of this leg. All 3 legs. You just do it, instead of doing it on the switch itself, you do it at your flex track just past the switch. So it's still picking up power all the way through.
There are locomotives that will be more finicky. How about what is that little bitty jobby? Little bright yellow thing that's used in container yards a lot. But I have to have one, by the way. They use one at one of the coal loaders that I'm modeling, and it's a locomotive.
Workhorse.
Pardon me?
It's the little workhorses.
Yeah, they have a little mobile, whatever. There's a name for that little locomotive. For sure, that thing would require powered frogs or a keep alive, but you can't get a keep alive in it. So there's one place on my layout when I get to that place where I'm going to run that little track mobile. That's the thing I'm thinking of, the track mobile. And on that,
okay, but that's things like sub 2 inches, right?
That's right. But you can't get a keep alive in it.
So that makes sense if you're running that kind of a thing. And you probably could get a keep alive in it. You just got to figure out how to get a smaller one.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Carolina Foothills. Yeah, I don't know if you could even get. I think basically everybody said you can't get a keep alive in them. They're really tough. But I only need to run that thing on 2 tracks. That is, it's a little stub ended track. The track mobile's at the end, and it's going to push back and forth. I may juice the frogs in that one little area for that very specific case. But I did drop a green wire to all the frogs I put in so far, just in case the situation turns up that I need to go back and add that capability. And if you were going to juice frogs or power frogs, in my case, because of the way I throw mine, I would use a frog juicer. They're awesome. I got a frog juicer for doing my auto reverser because it's basically the same circuitry. It's just detect short, flip the polarity. Whether
So
it's auto reverse
Sparky, this is 5 turnouts that stacked together. There's no difference between 5 turnouts and 9 turnouts stacked together. It's about how you run your power through it. So on your outsides, for example, let's say that's your power. Inside rail is going to be your common, right? Or negative, either way. You're running that same power structure through everything here. So while there are gaps in your frogs, and obviously I'm using the fast tracks as the example, but if you're using the gaps in the frogs right here, okay, then you're picking up negative, positive, negative, positive. So your positive is always running on your common rails, and you're picking up your points are picking up power from your common rails. So if you power it from the outsides instead of the frog itself, if you power it from this piece here, it's pulling power all the way down and through because it's pulling power from this point here for that outside rail. That outside rail is all the way down, and it's not cut or nothing, except for where the 2 turnouts join together. And you just use the track connector, and I know that's not the right freaking term for it. Rail joiner. There we
rail
go.
joiner? Is that
Yeah,
what
yeah.
you're talking about? Rail joiner?
You use the rail joiner, the mechanical connection on the rail joiner to transfer your power from your common or your powered, either way, all the way down that main rail. Then what's up, Adam? Then you're picking up power from the other side off of your yard tracks instead of right directly at your turnouts.
But if there is a scenario, frog juicers are great. Just I would I'd recommend weighing the cost difference out.
I just can't for the life of me understand why you would use a frog juicer in a yard ladder situation. I just don't understand it. That's all.
There are a lot of locomotives that are feeding. So it used to be a worse problem, but some of the steam locomotives that depended on that like got one rail from the locomotive and the other rail from the tender, they were a little finicky about it, but I just wouldn't go to the trouble unless it was necessary.
That's what I'm saying. If it's not absolutely necessary, I would not qualify that as a best practices scenario personally.
Well, there's so many people that build their whole layout. Well, there's so many people build their entire layout and switch and do polarity switching on every frog on the layout, either through frog juicers or tortoises or something else, just to cover their bases or whatever. And that just seems like a very in the modern world with keep alives and locomotives.
Here, Johnny, since you're still here but just not on screen, do me a favor, throw this up. So here's another scenario. This is the other end of that yard that we were just looking at. It's 5 curved turnouts, which my personal opinion is curved turnouts are a lot more finicky than straight turnouts. But it's the same scenario. I power it off of the yard tracks and then off of the back here. And it works just fine. I've run every locomotive I have right through there. It doesn't stall, doesn't give any issues. It's got plenty of power running all the way through there.
Well, it sparks mentioning like an 060 steam locomotive, and that is a fairly short wheelbase, effectively a fairly short wheelbase. Now, if it's a more modern locomotive, it has pickups and pickups in the tender and such, as well as the driving wheels. That's probably not going to be a problem for you. And Dave BNSF mentions an N-scale. No question. I only mentioned it because I knew Spark was Sparky's an HO scale modeler. You N-scale guys, you don't have the benefit of upkeep alives, and that's unlikely to change, realistically. So powering frogs makes a lot of sense in certain scenarios, in N-scale and other scenarios.
So we're talking about it. We're talking about an 060. And we're talking about a number 5. Okay, the distance between a number 5 and a number 6 is not drastic enough to really be concerned about.
Yeah, it's nothing.
And I've seen a bit where they actually power the frog for positive, but I don't.
So can I ask the question regarding the frog juices?
Yeah.
Because over here in Australia, they're not really used. There's a few guys that are really singing the praises of them. But what I'm wondering is, so with my stuff, with narrow gauge, I've always used the DCC Concepts Cobalt point motors or the Tortoise point motors.
Sure.
So with those, you have the functionality built into them to power the frog.
Absolutely.
So how is what's the difference between that and one of the hex frog juicers?
So the frog juicer does not depend on a closure contact like in the Tortoise or the Cobalts. It takes both of your inputs from north and south or rails and gives one out to the frog. But what it does is it'll just stay on whatever polarity it was on. So let's say it's set to the north. If a locomotive bridges that gap and it detects a short in 100 milliseconds or something, it flips the polarity the other way. So it does not care. You don't have to flip the polarity. It will automatically determine if the polarity is wrong and flip the polarity. It's basically doing what an auto reverser does for two rails, but doing it just for the frog. It is an auto reverser. So I have a frog juicer that I'm going to use for an auto reverser. And you can either use it's the hex juicer, and you can either use it to juice 6 frogs, or you could use it to control 3 auto reverser segments, because it is the same. The underpinnings are the same.
Okay.
And it's a beautiful technology. It's a great way to solve that problem, especially if you have manual turnouts that you can't integrate a switch into, or the little pull cables, or servos. That's really where they shine, where you probably would not want to integrate mechanical contact closures into your servo arrangement in order to make that closure. You could. People have done it, but it's less elegant. The frog juicer is a very elegant way to solve that problem in the few scenarios where you need it. And like I said, that one area where I'm going to run a track mobile, that's how I'll solve it, because they're very elegant. I just don't want to spend that much money on frog juicers for the entire layout. If it were a problem, keep alive is just a lot more bang for the buck.
Okay. All right. So, okay, because I'm looking at using servo motors for all of mine. So, which is a bit of a dark technology to me. I'm not up on that yet, but I've got to learn.
Well, if you hang out around here long enough, we can teach you a few things. Andy and I both use servos for our turnouts.
Excellent. I'll be taking notes in every conversation.
If you have a whole crap of tortoises, or if you're already entirely comfortable with tortoises, by all means, people run the things. They're spectacular. They're really good. But you can control 10 plus turnouts with servos for the cost of one tortoise. It's not that you're paying. It's not that the tortoise is a 10% premium over a servo or another solution. It's a 10x cost. So the tortoise is a great device. If it was a small premium over a servo, maybe I would consider using them. But the reason I started looking for alternatives, I'd used tortoises for years previously as well. The reason I went another direction was on this layout, being the first multi-deck layout, I needed to get my throw mechanisms down really narrow. And the tortoise is a pretty big, bulky device.
Well,
the
I've used it.
Will reverse the polarity for you too if you wire them up.
Absolutely. And do the cobalt motors. They do that contact closure. And you can do that with mechanically, just like the tortoise, with a servo by putting a switch in line, an SPDT switch in line, and putting drilling a hole through the thing and putting ferrules on it. That's just not elegant. If you're going to use tortoises, either skipping the frog juicers or juicing the frog altogether, or frog juicers are a really elegant way to solve the problem.
So I just had a strange thought. So we're talking about smaller engines, right? So 060s or 44-ton 2-axles, things like these that are having these issues.
Yep.
Is it, first of all, is it possible to get a double isolated wheel set, so isolation on each side of the axle, and just wire in wipers to pick up from both sides and solve that whole problem?
No, that still doesn't. I'd have to think about any way to solve that. I can't
So-
think
so
of a way to solve
typically-
that without having a third rail.
So typically the problem is that you're not getting pickup from both sides, right? Or you're getting right into that gap. But if you get the whole thing into the gap, I don't know, maybe not. If you get the whole thing into the gap, then maybe you wouldn't be able to pick up any power from it. There's got to be another way to fix that. That's less.
But that's why
electronic.
Keep Alive solved that problem so elegantly and quite cost effectively, especially since a couple things. A lot of locomotives you buy, the new Scaltrains locomotives I've ordered recently, all come with the V5 with power pack on them. So it's already built into a lot of new locomotives. It's the Loc Sound, even the Loc Sound V5 and V4 decoders that I have. It's just a simple plug in their power pack. It's a very easy way to solve that problem. But these 6-axle locomotives I've got don't even need it. I just want the power pack on everything, basically so I can be lazier about track cleaning, to be forthright about this. I just don't want to have to think so much about track cleaning, and Keep Alives are very good for that.
So a couple of things. Yeah, I got you, Johnny. So a couple of things here. Johnny says the problem with Brian says that the problem with Keep Alives is the discharge and recharge times. That's the part that scares me, not the recharge time, because my layout's fairly large, but the discharge time. As soon as it hits a dead spot, how long is it going to run before it dies? What's the possibility of you running that thing off of an open bridge because of that discharge time?
Yeah, but you could solve that open bridge problem really easily. You could either solve it mechanically. Well, there's several ways to solve that problem. Yeah, see, with those little locomotives, and you can get a Keep Alive in the roof of the cab of that locomotive or something to make it work. But I have a solution for how to make a DCC and Keep Alive compatible way to stop a locomotive in the event that it overruns or is approaching a lift-up section. You do it mechanically, like Miles did with a servo that pushes a wire up. But again, that's awesome, but it's not the most elegant solution. I have a dedicated DCC++ system or EX system that is just setting there. When it boots up, one of the scripts is to just broadcast emergency stop on all. Just emergency stop the whole layout.
Johnny, can you throw that screen share up real quick?
This engine here is an RSO 35 tonner, so it's oldie.
It's got two wheel sets in the middle or at the ends.
It's got. I'll see if I can hold it up where I can show you.
Yeah, see that should be just enough to get through a number 6 turnout.
Maybe, but
just
again,
barely.
What if at least a little bit of dirt is on something? That's a problem. The problem that most of us experienced years ago when this has been a problem forever, is that a lot of times these small locomotives would go through the frog. A lot of times, ever so often, they would stop. And Murphy's Law says that if they're going to stop on a turnout, it's going to be one that's hard to reach.
So real quick, because Sparky's trying to explain it. So Sparky, if I'm understanding, on the bottom rail of each one of these switches, so that's going to be this one here, right? That rail has no power. Top track on each switch. So that top track should be picking up power from your yard track. And it's doing it on both ends.
What's wrong with Sparky's idea that he said in there about putting feeders on each switch? That's what I did on my last layout, and it seemed ironically the ladder was the best bit for pickup on the layout.
So my experience has been, so a caveat: I build all my turnouts using the fast track system. I don't do commercial turnouts. That's the caveat. But the way I build my switches, I don't put any feeders directly on my turnouts ever. I put them right here within the first couple of ties of the flex track on each leg of those turnouts.
Why?
So
Why don't you put them on the turnout
How are
itself?
you feeding?
So it's pulling.
How are you
Let's say
feeding the closure?
so the outside. Let's say the outside you're positive, the inside is your negative, right?
Mhm.
So if I put a feeder out here, it's pulling that positive all the way through, and it's catching another connection right here. So it's double feeded up. It's double fed both sides, right? Okay, so my
Sure.
negative is on the inside on each one of these. So this outside here, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one are all negative.
Mhm.
We're pulling negative all the way through. The opposite is true. This here, this one here, this one here. It's all the positive and negative, right? So it's keeping them all in line right where they should be. The isolation gaps are where they should be. So the only dead spot it hits is right in between those frog gaps. I'm getting myself.
Okay, but how are you dealing with the
And the
inside
question,
of the turn?
and his question was, why are you not feeding your turnouts themselves?
There's no need to.
Yeah, but
Well, what
you
about the
also
closure
do it.
rails?
You also do it because you got yours free floating, so you can replace them if you need to.
Right.
And
Right.
you
So
don't
if
have
I
to disconnect the wires.
exactly. So if I for some reason one of my handmade turnouts fails, like it was one of the first ones I did, which, let's be honest, the first ones are always hot garbage. So when I go to replace those, instead of having to pull everything up, unconnect it from the bottom of the layout and unconnect it from the bus and all this other stuff to get it out of there, all I have to do is slide the rail joiners back to the adjoining turnouts and lift it right out of there. It comes right out. And then when I go to put the new one in, I just drop it right down in its place. I slide the rail joiners on. It's ready to go.
So, but you're getting power to the closure rails, the rails between the frog and the points. You're getting power to those because you have printed circuit
Yes.
board ties on any
Yes.
commercial
However,
turnout. Or
however, hold on, let me answer this question correctly. So we're getting power from multiple locations through this stock rail, right? So my stock rail is soldered to a PC tie. That's picking up power out here. Now, when I solder my points, I solder solid and hinged both. So I'm only getting this little bit of movement in my rails. So I'm
So
getting
you've got
effectively 3 points of power on those.
You've
point
got
rails.
the two ties or the 3 ties that are actually soldered to the switch rails.
So your switch rails, which I think you guys are switch rails, the inside set, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
points.
So on our we call them points, points, whatever. It's all the same. So I have a solder point here on the inside and here on the outside.
Yep.
So I have a solid electrical connection between all the way through that issue. Now, I
Well,
also
even
have
if you have
another
a
set
hit-
of that electrical connection here at the solid point, as well as where the point itself touches the stock rail.
So forgive my ignorance, but okay, so with this set of points or this switch here, if I was wiring that on my layout, assuming it was a commercially made turnout, not a handmade one, I would have a feeder wire on the outside rail, on both outside rails, and then I would run the frog wire from the turnout motor into the frog, and that would look after switching the polarity through the switch rails. However, looking at what you've got here being handmade points, which, as you know, is what I'm going for on our next layout.
Right.
But based on that, it looks like if you've just got feeders to the 2 outer rails, all the rest is taken care of.
Yep.
Just because of those 3 PCB ties.
Yep.
So
you've got
you've kind of negated the need for a frog juicer or anything else, unless I'm missing something.
Nope, you're absolutely right, because the other thing that's happening is there's an isolation gap cut right here in between these 2 PC ties, as well as down here between these 2 PC ties. So your entire frog structure is electrically isolated. Now, because of this, you've got your let's say this is your negative, the top one's your positive. You've got it feeders here, here, here. So you're electrically covered. Completely electrically covered. You don't need frog juicers. You don't need any of these other shenanigans that
So
people are
you've
going with
literally,
commercial printouts.
so start, middle, and finish of it is with that switch set up like that. All you need is your handmade switch and a servo motor. You could even go with the old, like the Pico system with the solenoids. It doesn't actually matter. The
Right.
electrical side of it is taken care of.
Yep.
The only dead
Electrically,
spot you're going to get is the actual frog.
Yep, exactly.
So the sole purpose would be if you had locomotives or rolling stock with features on them that had a very small wheelbase.
A very small wheelbase, like Sparky 107 is talking about like an 060.
Yeah.
And there was mention of a 44-tonner 2-axle. Those are going to have some inherent issues.
How about a caboose or a sound car, a soundtrack sound car, or a passenger car?
So it's if it's picking up power from both wheel sets,
it's
not an issue.
Not. Yeah, they're not. They're picking up like a truck. A truck on a caboose is just going to be one truck. It's going to pick up the power. A soundtrack sound car, same thing. A passenger car.
So the solve for that is to make the other side, the other wheel set, the other truck, electrically powered.
Yeah, you could do
Or
that.
You're splicing in a power wire.
Or the other option, which you should have the space for, is to put a keep alive in there.
That's where I come to is a keep alive. No problem.
I am so anti keep alive. It's not even funny.
Well, for a sound car, that'd be fine. For a sound car, that's fine. But on locomotives, yeah, if you got lift ups or drop outs, you got to be careful about your keep alive.
But there's a solution to that. You just have to actively solve the solution.
So, okay. So my question, which is coming from a complete point of ignorance, is why are you guys against the idea of keep alives? Like what presents the problem for you guys?
So, and that was, I think it was the second thing so the keep alive for me is the drain off time. I don't know. There's something about that that just kind of scares me, to be completely honest.
That's the whole benefit to it is the drain time. You want that 13 seconds. Now, you could lower that. You could easily get a keep alive that only has 2 seconds.
Okay, hypothetically then, let's explore this. So hypothetically then, let's say I have a massive short on my layout somewhere randomly, right? The whole power on the layout shuts off. But my locomotive's still moving because of that keep alive, right?
Yeah,
yep.
Sure. That's the
What if the problem's in the engine? What if it's trying to release that magic smoke and I try to kill the power to save it, or try to save it anyway? It's still moving, so now it's still got power through it. Now it's still smoking even longer, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
Right? So it's got its trade-offs for sure. I could see the benefits, but the downsides is what I don't know.
So the downside is like these couple edge cases, and the benefits are like,
hey, hold on.
400 awesome things.
I'm going to put a pause right there because you are the master of arguing for the edge cases.
Understandably, I just think you have to solve for the edge case, like the keep alive issue, like circuit protection, which you should have anyway, solves problem. If you have lift outs, as do I, you have to solve for those to protect them anyway. Whether you have keep alives or not, the right way to solve the problem is not to just hope that the locomotive gets turned off before it gets there. It's either to put up a physical barrier or to take active measures to stop your trains. And even the keep alive or not having keep alive doesn't actually really help you on lift outs like a lot of people think anyway. If I'm backing a 30-car coal train and the lift out's open, it is irrelevant if I put a 10-foot block of unpowered track that I pull the power off from. My train's longer than 10 feet and I'm back in the coal track. I'm still going to shove $25, $60 a piece coal cars into the floor. So the right way to solve that problem is to correct for it in the architecture of the electrical infrastructure of the layout so that the trains do the right things when those edge cases are reached.
I mean, it seems to me like the actual right way to solve for this problem is to clean your track thoroughly, and then run your locomotives and your engines and your trains twice a week.
So what
The
if
best
you
way
have,
to keep your rails clean is to run your locomotives.
but are you going to run your locomotives over every siding and every stick
Sure.
of track?
Why did I put it down if I'm not going to use it?
Well, maybe, but that
And if
sounds
it's
like
not a stick, it's like a disconnected line, and who cares if it's dirty? You're not going to run over a disconnected line anyway.
no. But I bought my prototype. There's sidings on my layout that will probably be switched every 6 or 8 operating sessions. So 3 times a year, a locomotive will hit a piece of track, a particular piece of track.
Okay, so in your case, you just got to clean the track more often, or every time you want to do an operating session, which frankly, you should be cleaning your tracks before you do an operating session anyway.
Yeah, CRC, contact cleaner.
Oh my God.
It'll
Next
be
thing you're going to tell me is transmission oil. Give me a
No,
break.
no. What is the track? The track to the wheel surface is a contact, just like a headphone jack. It's an electrical contact. It is.
Are you one of these guys that puts your headphone jack in your mouth to get a little bit of wet and then plug it in? Are you one of those guys?
No. If you want to clean electrical contacts, you clean them with an electrical contact cleaner, like CRC or something else. CRC is the one that's become popular in our hobby over the last couple decades or something. The track to wheel interface is an electrical contact. It's also, holding the trains, in the correct direction like the prototype, but it's an electrical contact. If you want to clean that, the right way to clean that is an electrical contact cleaner.
But doesn't that put a liquid or a oily film residue down?
No, it
No,
doesn't
the
have.
whole point of a contact cleaner is it has to be residue less or effectively residue less. If it leaves a residue, it is not a contact cleaner or it's not a good contact cleaner. It has to be like alcohol or something. Alcohol's not even perfect in that way. CRC is a very good way to clean track.
See, and I just run a block of wood along my rails and cleans it just fine.
Yeah.
You laugh at him, but I'm absolutely not kidding. I have like 3 or 4 1-inch blocks of wood that I run along. It picks all that crap right off there, no problem.
Me being me and having had some interesting conversations with you,
Thanks,
my head, I had a mental image of you rolling a log along it with bark falling off everywhere and a termite here and there and things like that,
No, that
gives me an interesting modeling idea, actually.
Incidentally, I've just got to say this and get it out there. When I came in here, my darling wife Bridget said she loves hearing Andy's voice because he sounds like Chucky from Rugrats.
Oh, what an example! If you guys
that's great.
If you guys start calling me, that's fine. I have no problem with that because there's nothing I can do about it. If you guys start calling me Chucky, though, this is a no deal. So
I'm not gonna lie to you. That was kind of my first thought after he said that. That's his new nickname. I'm calling him Chucky from here on out.
I knew that's where you were going, Robert. I know you that well.
So yeah, I just had to get that out there. But anyway,
that's great. That's great. That's awesome.
Well, I tell you what, we done hit the 1 hour mark and gone plus. There is an announcement to make before everybody starts bailing. We've got a new show that's going to start up on January the 19th. And it's just going to be, it'll be a kind of a short series. It'll run for about 3, maybe 4 months, once a month. And it's going to be with the track planner. He's got a series he wanted to do. So we had a meeting with him. And it looks like he'll start up on January the 19th at 9 o'clock like all other shows.
Take a picture.
So I want to look out for that one. And Big Bill is kind of under the weather right now, so he's not scheduling any shows for right now.
See, you're doing it again.
Until he get himself back in shape again.
Enough.
Just for Derek, a question about the new Walthers track. I could be wrong on this because it may not have been released yet, but I believe the new Walthers track is actually the old Shinohara track.
Yeah.
Because when Shinohara decided to pack up, Walthers bought the tooling for the standard gauge track, and the narrow gauge track was brought by a Japanese company called Imon.
Oh.
Hmm.
Huh.
So we followed that quite closely because we've manufactured our own flex track in narrow gauge, as a couple of you guys know. But yeah, we were looking at the supplies of who owns the tooling for what, for the tires or sleepers as we call them, and where they're getting their rail from, which is where we ended up coming to the point of drawing our own rail, just because the supply has been a bit sporadic around the world over the last 2 years with all this COVID nonsense.
Yeah.
So the conclusion we came to is that for HO scale, there's about 20 manufacturers of track, but there's only there's about 5 manufacturers of rail, but there's only 2 that you actually want to know about. So the other 3, they make it out of brass, they make it out of steel, they make it out of all sorts of things that you really don't want.
Yeah. Yeah, especially the brass.
Well, believe it or not, the nickel silver rail that we use is actually called white brass.
Right, that's what the Chinese call it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, because we went through a hell of a time, because we made ours in Taiwan, and we had a nightmare of a time trying to work out a translation for nickel silver. And so in the end, we went down this whole rabbit hole of basically molecular science of, trying to give them the exact chemical equation. And in the end, it came down to, white brass. That was it. It was quite painful and embarrassing, but that took about a month of our lives when all we needed to know was 2 words, 2 single syllable words.
But you found your way to it, and I think it's incredibly fascinating that you sent them a molecular structure. You're trying to explain this thing, and you're like, all right, you give me some dowels and stuff, and I'm going to show you the molecule in a couple of minutes with a model, and we'll figure this thing out. But
Yeah,
you saw it.
It was interesting, and in the end, we all just basically smacked our own heads and just laughed. So,
Yeah.
Code 40 Rail, there is a company in England called C&L. I believe they make Code 40. And I believe that if you've got Code 40 Rail, you've probably got some C&L rail without knowing it, because they're one of the major suppliers.
So is Code 40 not regularly available through other vendors other than microengineering, like in the N-scale space? Because, N-scale Code 40 rail would be fine to use in scale for Code 40. It's Code 40 rail with a rail shape. Is microengineering the only people making Code 40? Extruding Code 40 rail? Other than CNAP?
Well, microengineering don't make their own rail, they buy it.
Okay.
So, yeah. And so, yeah, there is a company in the north of England that makes all different profiles of rail. But when we spoke to them, the word we got was that supply is a bit sporadic, in that they said, we can give you 200 kilos or something of rail now, but we're going to need 12 months notice to give you more. So, yeah, which we like to pretend that we're very well organized, but the reality is we're not. We're certainly not well organized 12 months out from the event, So, yeah, so we ended up going down the road of drawing our own rail and creating our own extrusion tool.
2 kilos of rail. That is a lot of rail.
Yeah, it's about 16 kilometers if memory serves. So that's 10 miles.
That's a lot of rail.
It's a little.
For me, building a layout, absolutely, that's a lot of rail. For a vendor that's shipping rail a whole lot, that still might be quite a bit. But
well, I mean, I was kind of kicking the idea around of building turnouts for people. So I'm gonna need to source a lot of rail.
So
I don't know if I need I don't even know if I need 2 kilos of rail.
Sure.
Well, no, it wasn't 2 kilos. It was 200 kilos.
Oh, 200. Yeah, that's even worse. 200 kilos.
So 440 pounds of the stuff. And yeah,
no,
it was
I think
10 miles of track.
Let's see it shipping over in a big metal container.
Mate, if you want to build turnouts for people, feel free to make them narrow gauge for ours because we need an insane number. As you've seen the diagram of our layout, and
Yeah, I've already got 60 to build for one guy. Well, 30 now and then 30 later.
Yeah, I've been through that deal before.
The only I wouldn't mind
boy,
it so
Johnny
much if they were
had
HO scale, but they're in scale.
Oh,
Have you built any of them in scale yet? You bought
Not
the
yet.
fixtures, right?
I've got the fixtures. I've got all the tools to do it. I just haven't done it yet.
I'm super interested when you build the first couple or whatever to learn the difficulty difference in HO in scale fast tracks. What if
My
there's a level of
instinct is that I'm gonna or almost over file them
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
because
Yeah.
typically like I do about anywhere between 8 and 10 strokes, just upstrokes. I don't do up and back, just upstrokes, 10 upstrokes of my file to get all my stuff filed down to where it needs to be. And I don't think I think it's going to be a lot less than 10 in scale.
but what code rail are you working with?
I think it's code 55,
Okay, and what are you working with in HO?
100.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Well, in theory, the actual web of the rail will be the same thickness. It's just the height difference between the foot and the head of the rail.
Yeah,
is all that really changes. But the web should be pretty close to the same thickness because structurally you still need it to be that.
yeah, we'll see. I'm a little nervous. That's why I haven't really dived into that one yet. But
contrary to popular belief, most of the time, your rail profile, the only change between codes is the vertical height.
Yeah.
All the other dimensions remain pretty much the same.
But there's differences, but that's right. That's why
I did notice that actually.
Code 40 in scale rails the same as code 40 HO scale rail, but there's a difference between vendors. So, and especially in the width of the base between vendors and the width of the web. Like Atlas, that rail's really wide.
Yeah, well, the wider the foot, the easier it is to thread into injection molded sleepers or ties.
Sure. It's just not as easy to fit into like fast tracks fixtures, for example. So
sure it is.
Can you get the Atlas in the fast tracks fixture?
You just get your Dremel wheel going with the sanding bit on it and just shave the edge of that foot off of there.
Sure, man. There's ways to skin.
Yeah, well, I've
it
tried that too. I did that too because the fast track's set up for micro engineering rail, and I was having a little problem. So I figured, okay, I'll just sand the foot down, the width of it to fit in there. Yeah, then I had the issue of alignments and the distance between the rails. I was throwing that off.
So
in the fast track picture, yes. Yeah. But so the reason I did that on mine was that no, you can't take it off of both sides because you're literally doing one pass. It's only one pass to get that down to where it needs to be. It's not much. But when I did mine, I was putting it into the micro engineering bridge sections. So I didn't really have to worry about alignment and all that other stuff too much, like it would be in the turnouts. It was it had a little bit more play to it. But yeah, when I set those down, I used a track gauge to set them down and get them glued down and everything too. So.
Well, you're not changing it that much. We're talking about thousandths, a thousandths or something here and there. It's probably fine.
Famous last words.
Says the guy who spent like 6 hours arguing about a bridge structure. It's probably fine.
Well, I'm just saying in your case or whatever, that my instinct was that it would offset the center of the top of the rail and it would mess with gauge. And that would concern me as I had like track. I would have to adjust for that. And
my instinct also is that if you sand off that edge of the foot and you try to put it in a fast tracks fixture, if you don't use a track gauge, it's gonna want to go out of alignment because you're only pushing up against one side for your fixture. So if you've got a spot where it's not exactly straight, then you're only contacting one surface in that fixture to hold your alignment. So you'd have to go back through if you're going to do that, you have to go back through with the track gauge to make sure everything stays in alignment.
Okay. Yeah, that
But
makes
you just
more sense.
account
to
for
me.
that when you're going to do that, and you just know that you got to run the track gauge the whole time you're doing stuff.
Yeah. Which
Yeah,
I
because
mean,
I was having that problem when I was doing the points on it, and I
Yeah.
finally figured out that the where he says don't solder the point rail, I figured out I needed. Well, it's not the point rail; it's the stock rail, the outside rail.
Yeah.
Because when it goes around the curve,
Mhm.
it tends to flex the other way.
Yep.
I was having to push it back, so I said, "Well, to heck with this." While I first laid it in, before it gets any stress on it, I soldered it to the PC tie. And solved that. I don't have the problem with it wanting to flex with me the other way or twist.
And did you get the rail bending tool that they offer?
No.
Oh, see that there between that tool and the PC tie cutting tool, those two make it so much faster. You just
Well, I
run
got
your
the PC
stock
tie. I
rail
mean,
through.
I've got the jig for the PC ties, but
Okay, yeah.
as
Between
far
those
as
two tools,
putting the curvature to my rail, I just took a piece of wood dowel, cut a slit in it, and I'll pull it across the rail.
huh?
well, if all you're doing is turnouts and all you've got to do is bend the closure rails, you're probably okay. I've got the fixture because I'm hand laying curve track all over the layout. So the rail bender is entirely justifiable if you're going to hand lay a lot of track. If you're just going to do turnouts, the dowel idea is a great trick for that. I hadn't thought about that, but I've just been it with my fingers many times.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but if
the
you're
rail
putting
benders
down, if you're making a batch of 30 turnouts, eventually your thumb's gonna wear out.
Well,
But it's
after
repeatable.
about 4 of them, mine did, so I started using the dowel. I build mine in batches of 5 at a time
Yeah.
because
the
I
lucky thing,
pre-cut
Robert,
everything to length.
the lucky thing,
Oh.
Robert, is if your thumb does wear out, you've got a spare one on the other hand.
No, I try to keep that one for other things.
I'm afraid to ask.
All right. Well, we done shot almost an hour and a half here.
Yeah, do we
Yeah, the War Department's not happy at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So I appreciate everybody coming in. And how do you pronounce your first name?
Adam.
Adam. So
Okay,
whiskey's my surname, and yeah. So, but now I'm just Adam.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, welcome to the panel. Don't be a stranger.
Thank you, Johnny. Martin Jenkins has been telling me all about you and other things, and some of that stuff.
I've met Martin. I'll believe his wife, but not him.
Yeah. I've known Marty for 20 years, so yes, I believe Mary. I do not believe Marty. We call him Marshall.
Yeah, I got the chance to meet them, and Andy and I were hitting a few train shows, and we do the Airbnb, just rent houses,
Mm-hmm.
and we did one. Where was it? That was in Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. He came over to the KC one.
Yeah, because Mary and I had the exact same comment about that damn house. It's got steps on the front, and it killed both of us to go up and down them.
Well, there was no way into that house without steps. There were steps on the back porch. There were steps inside going to the basement.
I know it. But
Derek, it is 1:30 p.m. here. So to answer your question, but yeah, no. Marty's basically a font of information for things for me with my modeling. I mean, I make the things for a living, but electronically, the word novice doesn't even come close. And yeah, I always say to people, I'm genuinely electronically retarded. I make no excuses for it.
But he is definitely good, and he's a card to talk to because I really enjoyed meeting him and Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marty's savvy, good with electronics, but he is a character. I love that about him too.
The problem with Marty is that any conversation with him, I need a translator to put it into Adam speak, because he has this attitude of why use one word when 1,000 will do, and so
engineers, man. I'm an engineer too, and
Yeah.
the problem is we just see the world as complicated. So trying to simplify it is asking us to lie to you, is what it feels like to us.
Yeah, it's quite funny when you can get Marty to drink, which doesn't take much effort.
Whoa.
That's when it gets entertaining. There is a series of photos that I'll have to send to Robert and possibly to yourself, Andy, of Marty, because he has a habit of turning it up, as we say here, on the Saturday nights of model train shows.
Yeah.
So he spends the Sunday behind a layout with his hands on his head, fast asleep. And there's been many photographs taken of a young Martian doing internal reconnaissance of the eyelids.
He found his way into the hotel.
You'll have to send us a few so we can post them up here during the show. We'll do a little.
Oh, gladly. And the beautiful thing is he won't have a problem with it. He'll just turn around and say, "That bloody whiskey." So yeah, and it's the 7th here, by the way, Derek. So we're technically in the future. You're going to love it. It's wonderful.
It is a wonderful thing. I normally wait till Marty comes on, a lot of times, at least on the weekends, to go to bed. I sleep like a baby. I know tomorrow's going to come.
It's funny with the NMRAX things. Marty will be talking before or after it, and as I said, I make no bones about it. I have problems with the electrics, and so I try and pick everyone's brains. And so the thing is I'll ask a very simple question, or what I think is a very simple question. I'll get an answer out of Marty, which will take about an hour and a half. And then Brad will do the translation, and it's basically, so insulated, or turn the kettle on, or something like that. It's always something very straightforward.
Well, hey, now you see there's no difference between Marty as far as the American Andy.
Engineers, this is a thing. Us engineers just see things as complicated. I don't know how to not see things as complicated. I just do. And if you ask us something and we're trying to be honest and complete with you, it feels like we're lying to simplify to the point of falsehood.
Did you basically just say yes?
Adam.
See?
Yes, mate.
Adam.
Yes, Johnny, mate.
This is our cure for Andy.
Yeah.
Marty does that with me in the Australian one all the time whenever I pick on Victorians. So he's an expat Victorian, and we're up here in Queensland, and so I always say to him, little things like, I'll say, did you see on the news that apparently Tasmania is moving closer to the mainland of Australia? And you'll sort of be, oh, really? And you say, yeah, it turns out Victoria sucks. That's it.
Okay.
And yes,
I got to shut it down now.
All right.
All right. So y'all have a good weekend. Don't forget, January the 19th, we got the track planner coming back. He's going to have a presentation for us. Looks like it's going to be pretty interesting too. It's a little different approach to layouts. Like I said, Bill's under the weather. He hasn't got anything scheduled right yet for January. So as soon as he gets himself discombobulated and back on the move again, he'll be having some guests come in. I know he was talking with a few. He will be on January the 20th, which is the day after the track planner. So with that said, y'all have a good one. Be careful, be safe, and we shall see y'all later. Let me see here. It's been a little while. I done lost my place in all this. Okay, here we go. Boom.